Hey everybody, I'm Jammer, and today I'd like to talk about a question that's been kind of floating around a lot recently. After the announcement of Bayonetta in Smash Bros., a lot of people are questioning, like, did she really win the ballot? Were the results skewed a little bit? Was there some kind of foul play, I guess? So I thought I'd just take a moment to kind of talk about what I think happened in regards to her inclusion and the whole Smash ballot process. First thing I'd just like to mention, if you follow me on Twitter, you probably already know this, but I actually, when I was writing the draft for my top 10 contenders in the Smash Fighter Ballot, a lot of people have now been pointing out that Bayonetta was not included in that video. And yes, she wasn't. But I went through a couple of files I used to have, and there was this draft where I had a top 15 for the ballot. And this is where I was drafting for who I was going to choose for that video. Bayonetta was actually in the slot of number 10. But I decided to switch her with Shantae because during the time that video was coming out, Shantae was getting some recent press. There was like potential leaks that she could be in the game. So I thought maybe it would be better to include her and talk about her instead. And I ended up completely scrapping Bayonetta in the first place. So in the end, it did make me wrong. But anyways, as Sakurai told us when she was announced, he talked about where her ratings were in a very obscure way. He did say that in Europe, she was very clearly number 1. While in America, she was at least in the top 5. He did mention that she was in the top 5 of the actualized fighters, or the potential fighters that could be actually become one. So more than likely, what he's referring to is, I almost bet that probably Snake was either the winner or pretty close, but he was unable to be included because of all the crap that's going on with him and his company, and it's a mess over there. So trying to get the rights to include him in Smash again was too much of an icky situation. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it in. And more than likely, knowing Americans and how they're internet trolls, more than likely Shrek and Goku and other non-video game characters probably made it in that top 5. Sakurai, of course, went over those characters saying there's no way they're going to be included. I bet you also Ridley may have been in there as well, and Ice Climbers, but because, of course, he had stated long before that they couldn't be included, they were, of course, passed over as well. So once they got to the actual top 5 of what he considered to be, I bet you Bayonetta was literally spot number 5. I'm almost willing to bet that King K. Rool probably was the number 1 pick, at least in America, and that's also the thing. His popularity is widespread, don't get me wrong, but perhaps that his popularity was really only strong in the West, rather than in Europe and Japan. Like, granted, he's probably ranking at least a little bit there, but more than likely his fan base is probably centered around the Americas. But in the end, he did state that she did win number 1 overall, so with the specific rules applied how he did. So I guess in the end it does make sense that she did become the fighter. There also might be another reason, this is me just kind of speculating, but potentially just because it's going to be, it probably was an easier process to include her rather than having to work with Xbox for Banjo. Like, sure, we as consumers could say, oh, it would be so easy to sign a contract. There's probably a lot more that we don't really understand, licensing and contracts and, you know, trying to incorporate third parties, and it's a lot more of a sticky mess, and we're a little bit ignorant to the fact of that. So trying to get characters like Banjo or Shovel Knight or Shantae, like, it's probably a lot harder than we really think it is. Because we're like, oh, Pac-Man, Mega Man, Ryu, Cloud, that was so easy. All you had to do is just knock on the door and be like, hey, Square, we'd like to borrow your character Smash. And like, yeah, sure. And then that's it. There's probably a lot more to it. And so, to my point, I'm saying with Bayonetta, it was probably a little bit of an easier process to get her character into Smash. Granted, she's, at this point, kind of a second-tier Nintendo character. Well, she is, but isn't. It's hard to really label her, but in the end, it's probably a lot easier to get her as a character in Smash rather than, you know, anyone else in that vein. I know a lot of people are really upset about her inclusion, and there could have been way more innovative or creative characters to be involved in the series, which, don't get me wrong, like, I agree in that sense as well, but the thing I'd like to point out is she is DLC, so that means you don't have to buy her. Would you have rather the game come out with Bayo on the disc, and then you'd have to buy, like, the really awesome Nintendo characters like Bowser Jr. or Duck Hunt? Like, that would have probably disappointed people a little bit more, saying that, like, why weren't these characters included with the disc? In a way, it almost makes me feel a little bit better about the whole thing, that awesome Nintendo characters such as K. Rool, Paper Mario, or even Slippy Toad. I mean, it heals the wound a little bit more just thinking about it that way. And this also, after watching this direct, and specifically when they showed off the Geno costume, it led me to, like, a revelation of, at first, you can watch back plenty of my Mii Fighter videos where I talk about how, yeah, they're great to represent these characters that probably won't actually get full-on character slots, But in the end, I still was really iffy about, like, oh, it's kind of taking away, like, oh, I'd much rather have Isabelle as an actual character, you know, and I was like, I was a little upset, and like, it was mixed feelings for him. I loved him, and I hated him. It was a little weird. But after seeing Geno, and then when they started announcing Tails and Knuckles, that's what, it just clicked. It just really clicked, because now it really makes sense that the Mii Fighters were incorporated to probably appease the fans that didn't get an actual character they wanted in the Smash. Because I know Knuckles and Tails were thrown around a ton in the Fighter Ballot. I never covered them specifically because I didn't think Sonic would get another character. But having them as costumes fit really perfectly, and then it made me realize that all the characters before that have all been characters that have definitely been requested as actual full-blown characters as well. You look back, the Inklings, when Splatoon came out, King K. Rool, that's the biggest one there is. There was Chrom, Lloyd, and then we of course got, you know, Geno just this last pack. So in the end, like, Mii Fighters, the true purpose was really just to cover the gaps the Fighter Ballot really couldn't do. Like, Sakurai knew that he was only going to be able to make one fighter from this ballot. I guarantee he knew that there was only going to be one coming from this suggestion box. But, however, he still saw all the names that were getting shown, and this probably led him to choose which characters could become costumes, so then at least those fans had some sort of representation from that character into the game. Granted, it's not the full-blown character slot, but, I mean, hey, in the Melee days, like, the roster is the roster, that's it. There was no, like, costume of another character, so in essence, you're still technically playing as a pretty cool representation of that character. Granted, it's not a full-blown King K. Rool or an Inkling with a unique moveset, but in the end, you're still kind of playing as a character. While it is just a recreation or a reference to, you're still that character. People will look at it and see that, yes, you are Geno, not be like, oh, you're just a Mii wearing a, what are you wearing? So in the end, my mind has finally been changed. I'm for Mii Fighter costumes. Of course, I'm like anyone else that would rather have a full-blown character, but if you think about it, without the costumes, none of those, like, let's say in a world there was no Mii Fighters in Smash Bros. 4. All the references and all the costumes wouldn't be there either. We wouldn't have any sort of reference to Geno. Inkling and Splatoon would have probably never been referenced besides maybe a trophy. There's King K. Rool would have been completely glossed over, and fans who have been voting for him day on and day out would have been really upset about it. At least in some form, these characters are represented in Smash Bros. As still playable characters, but not their full-blown identities. But hey, there's always, like I said in my last video, there's always hope for Smash 5. There's always the chance that one of them could be promoted and become a full-blown character. So anyways, to wrap this up, Bayonetta, while very controversial, she still is an awesome representation of her own character. She really looks like she came straight out of her games. And whether you're for or against her, I mean, and in the end, if you really don't want, you don't have to buy her. I mean, she is just an optional DLC that you don't have to get if you don't want to. It's not the character maybe I voted for or you voted for, but it's still really, I mean, she still looks really sweet. Like, I'm done. So anyways, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Be sure to smack the big thumbs up and subscribe if you already haven't. Anyways, I'll catch you later.